I just pressed it. Thank you. And then you will always put that vertex in the middle of your table. Does anyone know why we're going to put the vertex in the middle of our table?
Because it's in the middle of the shape.
It's the what?
It's in the middle.
It's the middle of the shape. It's your vertex. It's a turning point, right? So if your arc goes like this, we want the vertex here so that we find points on this side of it and we find points on this side of it. Okay, so you're always going to put the vertex in the middle. And then you can use your calculator or you can write it all out to find the missing pieces of that. Okay, and then from there you just connect. And then we'll find a domain and we'll find a range. Do you remember what domain means?
Range. Nice one.
X. The domain is your X values. The range is your potential Y values. Okay, so we'll talk about that in just a minute. All right, so here's your equation. Y equals X squared. I'm going to tell you a quick secret. That's called the parent function. We'll talk about the parent function later, not today. But this is the parent function for a quadratic. Okay, this is like the most basic quadratic, if you will. If y equals x squared is our setup, and we said the axis of symmetry is x equals negative b over 2a, we need to know what a and b are in this setup. What is your a value for y equals x squared? It's not 0. Oh, this is so annoying. It is 1. Y equals, remember this is the basic setup, ax squared plus bx plus c. So your a value is whatever comes in front of the x squared. So the number in front of x squared right now is a 1. So a is 1. What's your b value? 0. There isn't one. It's plus 0x plus 0. So b is 0, c is 0. Okay. So if this is your setup and we want to know the axis of symmetry, you're going x equals a negative b over 2 times a. Well, a negative 0 is just 0. 0 divided by anything is 0. So my axis of symmetry is x equals 0. And you always have to put that x equals with it because that's telling you it's a line, not just a point or a number, okay? So your axis of symmetry is 0. Let's just plot that right now. That means that line where x is always 0 is the y-axis. Okay, so there's your axis of symmetry. How do you find a vertex? Plug in the x value. So you come up here to the general equation, y equals x squared, and you plug a 0 in. Y equals 0 squared. What do you get for your y value then? What's 0 squared? 0. So your y value is 0. So where x is 0, y is 0. Okay, that point, that vertex that you find goes here, 0, 0. Okay, finding the next 4 points is just plugging numbers in. So here's what you should do. If you're at 0 and you want to go bigger, you go 1 and 2. If you're at 0 and you want to go smaller, you go negative 1 and negative 2. Okay, so here's your equation. If I plug a negative 2 into that, negative 2 squared, do you put parentheses around the negative 2? Yes. What is negative 2 squared? 4. Okay, you're doing negative 2 squared. Then you do a negative 1. What is negative 1 squared? 1. Okay, then you do 1. What is 1 squared? 1. What is 2 squared? 4. Okay, this will get you your graph. So let's plot those points. 0, 0. That's the origin. Negative 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Remember, negative 2 goes left, positive 4 goes up. Negative 1, 1 goes 1 left and 1 up. 1, 1 will be here, and 2, 4 will be there. Okay, so this is your graph. All you have to do is connect those points in a U-type shape. Don't make them straight lines. You can't make a straight line from that. Okay, now, domain and range. We said domain is X values, range is Y values. This is asking what are the possible X values in this equation. So think about if I'm starting with Y equals X squared, what could I plug in for X? Can I plug negative 7 million in for X? Totally. Could I plug in a positive 30 for X? Yeah. Could I plug in negative 45 for X? Yes. Could I plug in 6 million for X? Yes. You get really huge numbers, but you can do it. So your domain is all real numbers. Here's how you write all real numbers. Just 2 lines with an R, kind of like the paragraph P, but it's an R instead. Do you know the paragraph P from English class? Oh. So that means all real numbers. If you want to write all reals, that's fine too. You want to know a secret? That won't ever change. It will always be all real numbers. You can always plug anything in for these X values for the ones that we're going to do right now. What will change is the range. Okay, so now look at your graph. The range is your Y values. What is the lowest Y value on this graph? 0. So if this is as low as our Y's go, then our Y value has to be greater than or equal to that number. So you find your lowest Y value. The trick is it's always going to be your vertex Y value. That's not true. Well, yeah, it is. Depends if it's a maximum or minimum, but your vertex is going to be the number you're working with, okay? Questions on that? Okay, so that's the parent function. That's what your like general form of a quadratic will look like. But then they start to put numbers in other places and things move a little bit, but the process is still the same. So let's take a look at number 2. Can you tell me on this number 2 what your A value is? A is 1. What's your B value? 2. What's your C value? -1. A, B, and C. Okay. If we need our axis of symmetry, what's your formula? Negative B, right, over 2A. So you're going to say X equals a negative B is a -2 over 2 times 1. So that's -2 over 2. Remember, don't just plug this into your calculator. Your calculator will do it wrong. So multiply the bottom first and then divide. We get X equals -1. How do you find a vertex? Plug that in. So -1 something will be our vertex. When we plug that in, it's -1 squared plus 2 times -1 minus 1. So that's, and again, at this point, if you want to plug it into your calculator, as long as you plug in parentheses where parentheses are, you're good to go. So -1 squared is 1. Minus 2 minus 1. 1 minus 2 minus 1 is a -2. So your Y value of your vertex is -2. Do you remember where we put that point in our chart? In the middle. Okay, so this is -1, -2. Now, if I want to go smaller than -1, what number should go right here? Smaller than -1 on a number line. -2 and then -3. What if I want to go bigger than -1 on a number line? 0 and 1. Okay, so those will be the numbers you plug in. It's not always the same numbers, but it's always in order on either side of your vertex. Okay? All right, so let's plug those in. And again, you can do this in your calculator. You're just dropping them in to that original equation that you have that I just scribbled through. So when I plug in a -3, it's going to be, and I'm going to write it down here. You don't have to do this. Negative 3 squared plus 2 times negative 3 minus 1 will be your setup. So that's 9 minus 6 minus 1. 9 minus 6 minus 1 is? 9 minus 6 is 3, minus 1 is 2. So you get a 2 right here. But again, you can just plug that into your calculator. Does your calculator have a way? I think it does. Yeah, if you just go back, okay. I wish I could show you this on your calculator, but I don't have your calculator. I'm going to show you on my calculator, just because I want to make sure that you see this.
I use the arrows.
Yeah, the arrows are what you guys are going to use. There is no need to do a ton of extra work on this. Your calculator can do most of this work for you, but I just want to make sure that you're understanding what you're doing here. The wheel of death. Come on. I recorded earlier, just not that. Okay, I'm gonna do just one more of these and maybe 2 more. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how we're doing. Number 3. Actually, you do this one. Just give it a go. Talk to your neighbors. Try number 3 here, and then we'll walk through it together. Down the page a little bit. It says, what is the axis of symmetry for graph A? What is an axis of symmetry? It's a line. It's a vertical line. So where is the axis of symmetry on graph A? -2. But you have to write it how? X equals -2. Okay, that is your axis of symmetry. Okay, now go to the next one. What's the axis of symmetry for graph B?
3.
X equals, it always is X equals, and this one is at 3. The number is right, you just need the X. Okay, what's the vertex of the first graph? What is this point, in other words? -2, -5. And is that vertex, so this vertex, is that a maximum or a minimum? It's the lowest point on the graph. That's a minimum. Okay. What's the vertex of the second graph? What's this vertex? 3, 4. Is that a maximum or a minimum? Maximum. That's the high point of the graph. This point is the lowest point on the graph. That's a minimum. This point is the highest point on the graph. That's a maximum. This is a minimum. This is a maximum. Okay, then domain and range. The domain for the first one is going to be what? Do you even have to look at the graph? All real numbers. It's always all real numbers. The domain for graph B is what? All real numbers. Okay. The range, if you look at graph A, is y greater than or equal to or less than or equal to some number? Greater than. It's opening up. When it opens up, it's greater than or equal to. So y is greater than or equal to this number, the -5. On this one, y is what? y is less than or equal to this y value, the 4. Okay, whatever your highest y value is, it's less than or equal to that. Good on that? Okay. We're not gonna do those right now.